Before we begin today, I want to welcome the participants in KUB's teamwork program and their mentors that are here today. It's exciting to have you with us, and we're happy to have you here, and we'll be hearing a presentation on the program from Leslie a little bit later in our meeting. Mr. Coley, if you would note for the record that all the commissioners are present. Commissioners, we have meeting minutes from May 17 and June 20 to approve. Do I have a motion to approve the May 17, 2018 minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
And we also have the minutes from our meeting yesterday to approve. Have you had an opportunity to review those minutes? If so, and if they're acceptable to everyone, do I have a motion to approve the June 20 minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mintha.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioners, we have some housekeeping revisions to our cash investment policy. I'll remind those of you who are on the Audit and Finance Committee, these came to you in the spring, and you recommend these to the board for approval, so they come to you through the Audit Committee. I recognize Mark.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Resolution 1381 does provide for the adoption of a revised cash investment policy for KUB. And these revisions are necessary because we need to conform the policy to some recent changes, very minor changes in state law regarding the investment of public funds by municipalities. And as Ms. Roach just stated, we did review these changes with the Audit and Finance Committee earlier this year, so the revised policy does come via a recommendation from the committee. I'm going to spend just a very few minutes, just a couple of minutes, and review the purpose of the policy and the changes, and this is going to be maybe my quickest presentation of all time. So the policy itself was adopted many years ago by the KUB board, and the intention was to provide oversight, controls, and reporting requirements for KUB's investment activities related to our general operating funds, our cash contingency reserves, our bond sinking funds, our bond proceeds funds, and some other special funds. It does not incorporate or include our retirement system funds. Those are investments are monitored through separate investment policies approved by the board for our retirement systems. It also includes state law says a lot about the investment of public funds by municipalities. There are several statutes that address that, as you might be aware. It's very conservative, somewhat restrictive, as you might imagine, for the investment of public funds. But our policy mirrors that, as it's required to do. So with respects to having a list of permissible investments, the sources of collateralization, the requirements for collateralization, and overall investment objectives, ours mirrors exactly what state law says. For example, on our objectives, first and foremost, preservation of capital. You don't want to have your investments. We're not going to be out investing in the stock market and equity securities, anything such as that. That is prohibited by law. And also, it's relatively short-term maturities. We can only do investments that extend out as long as 4 years. We could request longer, but you have to make a petition to the comptroller's office for that. So it's relatively conservative limitations and requirements in our policy. The policy did establish an investment advisory committee, which includes the CFO, the manager of accounting, and other employees appointed by the president and CEO. The purpose of that committee is to make sure the policy is carried out appropriately and really oversee all the cash investment activities of KUB. One of the specific duties of the committee is to review the policy annually to see if any changes are warranted, and if so, recommend those changes to the CEO and to the board's Audit and Finance Committee, and that process has recently played out over the course of the first half of 2018 with the review and the recommendation for some minor changes. However, any amendments or revisions to the policy has to go through the full board, which is the subject of Resolution 1381 today. The changes itself, again, mirror the changes in state law that have occurred over the last couple of years, and they are very, very minor changes. For example, the list of permissible investments was updated to reflect the exact title of the local government investment pool. It said State Pool Investment Fund, though that title changed 15, 20 years ago. They recently changed it in state law. One noteworthy change is if you're going to invest in non-convertible debt securities, they did put a qualifier in the state law that says it has to be securities that have the highest ratings of at least 2 nationally rated national rating firms, such as Moody's and Standard & Poor's on that. So that's one of the changes. The other is on the sources of collateral. One of the options was deleted because the entity is no longer in existence. And outside of that, there's just some clarifications in terminology, and that is it. You may have noticed from the red line version, there really wasn't a whole lot of red line there. So again, the changes are very, very minor. But we did talk to the audit committee about it back in March. The committee in response adopted a resolution that recommended the full board adopt a revised cash investment policy for KUB that reflects those changes. And thus is the subject of Resolution 1381 for your consideration today. And I'd be happy to answer any questions before you vote.
Hey, Mark, does this investment policies get mirrored the retirement system policy, or are they governed totally separate?
They are separate. The retirement system investment policies have more flexibility in them. And in other words, you can invest in equities. They're really governed by the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, mirror the investment opportunities available through that system.
Okay, and this will mirror state law, and that will mirror TCRS.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
Any other questions, commissioners? Do we have any visitors here that want to speak to this resolution? Commissioners, we need a motion and a second of Resolution 1381 on first and final reading.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Coley, would you call the roll?
Mr. Askew?
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert?
Aye.
Commissioner Pennell?
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Small?
Aye.
Commissioner Ward?
Aye.
Resolution 1381 is passed.
You're still on.
I'm still on. Commissioners, I want to recognize Michelle Wilson. She's our procurement manager, and she is bringing to you a resolution where we're asking your authority to declare a portion of our Midway Road substation property as surplus.
Thank you, Mrs. Rhodes, and good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm here today to provide some information about Resolution 1382. We have identified a 6.72 acre parcel directly adjacent to our East Knox substation and also the Midway Business Park, which is no longer needed by any of KUB's utility systems, and we would like for your approval to authorize us to declare that surplus property and eventually sell that. If you'll take a look at the map, the parcel is located in the Strawberry Plains community of East Knoxville. It's in close proximity to Interstate 40 and the Midway Road exit. This is Thorn Grove Pike. Right here, this is KUB's East Knox infeed and substation. These are TVA assets. So we would retain both of those parcels. We're asking you to approve this 6.7 acre parcel as surplus property. Midway Business Park is adjacent to the east. As I understand it, the Development Corporation Board met this morning to consider layout and road access to that park, and Commissioner Small serves as an officer on that board. It would make the parcel attractive to potential buyers due to its close proximity to the park. Upon approval, that resolution would declare the parcel as surplus property. It would also allow for authorization of the President and CEO to sell the property in the best interest of KUB and the Electric Division, and all proceeds would be deposited in the funds of the Electric Division. That concludes my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No questions. It's very, very silent. Do we have any visitors that want to speak to this resolution? If not, I need a motion and second of Resolution 1382 on first and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Coley, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Askew?
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert?
Aye.
Commissioner Pennell?
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Small?
Aye.
Commissioner Ward?
Aye.
Resolution 1382 is passed.
you're back up.
Up and down, up and down. Commissioners, as you know, there's a lot of inherent risk in running a utility, both operationally, organizationally, the business side of things. And I want to recognize Eddie Black to just give you an overview of the programs that we have that try to mitigate, manage, and reduce that risk throughout the year.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. As Ms. Roach said, utility business is inherently risky. And one of the things I want to be doing today is talking with you about a specific type of risk that's more business-related or organizational-related. Some of these risks are fairly subtle. Some are difficult to identify. What it requires us to do is to honestly appraise and assess our business processes, identify things that we can do better, and then report those areas of potential improvement to the Board Audit and Finance Committee. Some of those reports are fairly sensitive and confidential. Think cybersecurity. So as a result, I'm going to keep things at a fairly high level in open session today, but if you have any specific questions about anything, I'd be happy to talk with you after this particular presentation. As you can imagine, our KUB blueprint anticipates and addresses this concept, just paraphrasing that shared value. Our customers trust us to do the right thing as a public utility and to demonstrate the high ethical standards we want them to expect of us. The area of risk mitigation, though, did not originate with a blueprint. It's been a board bylaw for some years now, and specifically it requires our president and CEO to periodically evaluate those risk areas and then to create and conduct audit plans around those risks. This actually has been in effect for almost 18 years now. That's where we transitioned from an internal risk structure to an independent external structure. At the end of each fiscal year, we have an accounting firm that's independent of KUB do the end-of-year financial audit and report those results to the Audit and Finance Committee. KUB management is responsible for all other risks, the non-financial risks. So how do we do this? Every 3 years, we have an external independent consultant come in and lead us through a comprehensive risk assessment effort. What we do is we have someone come in and facilitate meetings with our executive staff and our managers, and they kick those things off with open-ended questions such as, what are you most worried about? Or what keeps you up nights? This type of thing. This leads to brainstorming, some discussions. The consultant interjects their knowledge of the industry, some of the things that they've seen from a risk perspective, and all of those things are included in the list that we have. We usually come up with about 30 or so risk areas that we then categorize and then rank based on a couple of factors. The first is probability, that's the likelihood of occurrence, and then impact, what would happen if it did occur. You would think that with 30 risk areas over a 3-year period, we do about 10 a year. Actually, we do about 20 because a lot of those are annual risk assessments that we do. They're so important, we want to look at them every single year. Others we look at periodically, every couple of years, every 3 years, that kind of thing. These are the categories that we have for this year, and as you can see, it is fairly generic and looks fairly benign when you just look at it. But on the first one, for instance, information technology, I mentioned cybersecurity earlier. 99.9% of the companies that exist today probably have a concern about some level of cybersecurity. Once we have this category, though, we start diving in deeper and looking at things that are utility specific and even KUB unique. So at the end of the day, the risk assessment is a very valuable to us and a very confidential document, and we treat it as such. Another area that has the same confidentiality concerns would be human resources, drug and alcohol testing, medical claims audits, this kind of thing. Other things may not be quite as confidential, but still we want to treat these things with the care that they deserve. Who performs these risk audits? We have a mix of internal and external resources. Internally, we have our business processes group. A lot of times they're neutral regarding these processes and can come in and look at it and ask the naive questions, review the documentation, this type of thing, because they're not involved in the process. Other areas require more subject matter experts, and for those types of things, we'll have someone from the outside come in and review them. These are reported to the Audit and Finance Committee twice a year. In the early days of the program, in the early 2000s, we were just doing 6 to 10 a year, so we just reported once to the Audit and Finance Committee each year at the end of the year September report. Now that we're doing 20 or more, it's just easier to have a mid-year update on those we've completed so far, and then show the balance of them in September. As I said earlier, a lot of these things are very confidential, and so we reserve the right to break out into executive session to discuss some of these. For instance, if someone from the public were attending the Audit and Finance Committee, they would be asked to leave until we got through discussing this, and then they would be invited to return to the room. So what do we find? The majority of our findings are in compliance with procedures. A couple of reasons for that. A lot of them are the annual assessments that we do that I mentioned earlier. A lot of controls have been built around those. We look at them every single year. So naturally, we would be more likely to be in compliance with those. But sometimes we do identify opportunities for improvement. One of the major things is the consistency between the practice and documented procedures. We have a couple of responses to those. Sometimes we have to revise the actual practice to match the written procedures. Sometimes it's just the opposite. If the actual procedure or actual practices have evolved, we might need to update the written documentation. But we just want that consistency. Then the other thing is the need for improved documentation. There's a reason for that. We want to be consistent with what we do, not just rely on people without specific documentation on how to do things. And so that's very important for us. But the bottom line is this is a real good way to have opportunities for improvement each and every year. The current status, we reported 9 of the 19 risk reviews that we're doing in FY18 to the Audit and Finance Committee back in March. We've completed our comprehensive risk review this year with Lattimore, Black, Morgan, and Kane. The report is in its final draft form, and we'll be reporting that as well as the remaining reviews to the Audit and Finance Committee in September. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question since I'm not on the Audit and Finance Committee. I'm familiar with these, but since I'm not on them, this might be a question you've covered in your meetings. In the 17 or so, it's 2001 is when these started, or?
Yes, in its current format, yes.
Are there any risks that keep on coming up that are, or morpholog, are there some that are just active because of the nature of the risk?
Yes. Ever since I've been involved in this, information technology is right up there. Just based on how important it's become to how we do things. Back in 2000, 2001, we just survived Y2K, and we even had a backup plan that we could revert to written procedures not involving computers. You know, if worse were to come to worse, we couldn't do that now. And so as a result, since these are so important and the cybersecurity has gotten to be such a hot issue, that continues to be on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the process that led us to build redundancy into the water system? Or was that a separate?
That was more of a strategic initiative, but yeah, there is a risk element to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. Leslie is going to talk to us about the teamwork program.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I want to talk with you briefly about the teamwork program. We just completed our class of 2018 a couple of weeks ago, and they are here working with us throughout the summer. We have 23 students who completed the program. 22 students are employed here, both at KUB, and we have one student that's employed at the Chamber Partnership. And then we had one student who completed the program but decided to pursue another opportunity. Just a quick reminder that the Teamwork Program is a partnership between KUB and Austin East Magnet High School. And as a member of the Teamwork team, we are always looking for ways to enhance this program and also look for ways to help build a pipeline for future employment for us here at KUB. As you may recall, our former KUB Commissioner, Mr. Clifford Ross, had a goal and a vision for this program. And one of the goals is he wanted to expose inner city youth to the career opportunities here in the utility industry, but he also wanted to provide those students with some training tools and support as they were getting ready to prepare to enter the workforce. The objective of this program is to teach students, number one, are students getting ready to enter the workforce, how to gain employment. We talk about employer expectations. These students have the opportunity to learn some on-the-job skills and training. But probably one of the most important things, I think, when they come in as 16-year-olds here with us, it helps build some confidence with these students so that they can be successful as they enter into the workplace. And it also helps us, again, build that pipeline of future employment. And this program is just one of the many ways that it allows us as an organization to participate and give back to the communities in which we live and serve as well, which is one of our core values. Some of the key components of the program, these students go through 13 weeks of classroom sessions where we're teaching and providing these students with skills and tools such as resume writing, interviewing skills. They're learning about money management, time management, diversity awareness, workplace safety. So we're covering a wide variety of topics with these students. The students also complete a community service project, and they also have the opportunity to participate in some team building activities, and I'll talk a little bit more about those. Once the students complete the program, they have the opportunity to apply and compete for summer employment. And once those students are selected, and placed for the summer, they are then paired with a mentor who is their primary contact and support while they're here working with us throughout the summer. And I'll talk a little bit more about the mentoring component of the program. I'm very happy to say we have strong management support and engagement with this program, and I'll show some of the ways that we've really worked to engage our managers with this program. And one of the other things that we've done is we've worked really hard to strengthen our efforts in long-term outreach with these students. We get these students when they're juniors, and of course, so we're getting them fairly young. And so we're working to increase our outreach efforts by partnering with some other organizations and also doing some internal things to help build upon that outreach after they graduate from the program. I want to focus a little bit about some of our curriculum improvements. Like I said, they go through those 13 weeks of core curriculum, core classroom sessions, but we're always looking for ways to improve it. I think the core skills that we're trying to teach these students, those are beneficial whether they come to KUB or go out just into the general workforce. But we added some new classroom topics this year. One was personality traits. Because we realized that these students at 16 coming in may not necessarily know how to interact with adults. And so we wanted to really focus on them getting a better understanding of the communication styles and the personality, the behavioral traits, so that when they came into the workforce, they could maybe better adapt to working with adults. We also added a goal planning session. We asked these students to work on identifying their long-term and their short-term goals. We added field trips. Traditionally, most of these classroom sessions are held at the school. So the students, we go to them and bring this program. But we wanted to kind of reverse some of that and break it up a little bit. So we actually had the opportunity to take the students to WATE. Tirsa Smith is one of our speakers who's been participating in our program for several years. Traditionally, she would go to the school and present it. But she said, bring the kids to me. Let them see what my life is like in the workplace. And so it was one of the highlights of the program. You can see she's teaching them how to shake hands and all that, but she also works with them on communication, effective communication. We have a lot of our employees who deliver those classroom sessions, but we've really tried to work to leverage our partners. For example, we have a representative from SunTrust Bank who comes in and does the money management session. We have a lady with Jury TV who comes in and just talk about dressing for success, the appropriate attire you need to wear when you're going on an interview and when you're trying to secure a job. And then we also have our very own Mr. Smalls, Commissioner Smalls, I should say, in the University of Tennessee, and his team will come in and do diversity awareness with our students. So we're really trying to leverage the work relationships so that the students not only hear just about KUB's expectations, they have the opportunity to hear about other employer expectations as well. Another new element, well, I wouldn't say new, over the last couple of years, we've had a career fair because we wanted the students to have a chance to kind of hear from the other departments what they do. And so we really worked hard this year in challenging our departments to beef up their booths and make it more interactive so the students can get a true experience of what an employer does on a day-to-day basis. And so, and I think this was probably one of the best career fairs. We did some mock interviews with them, and they got to see the linemen and the gloves that they have to wear. So we really, really worked hard to make it more engaging so that the students wasn't just going up asking questions. They actually got to see the tools and the different things that they use in their day-to-day. We could not do this program without our mentors. Our mentors are the key to the success of this program. These are the frontline support system for the students when they arrive here at KUB. You may recall last year, I was before you and I talked about some of the things that we did to try to enhance the mentor training, just so they would be better prepared when the students arrived here, and just so that they could get a better understanding. It's easy and we get comfortable when we work amongst our peers, but trying to coach and mentor a teenager is different. And so we wanted to provide them with some tools and skills to be able to do that. Typically, our mentors were selected a little bit later in the process, and so we engaged our managers and said, hey, we want to identify and select those mentors earlier in the program so that they had the opportunity to go through the training earlier in the process, but they also could attend those classroom sessions so that they could build relationships with the students. And also, it allowed them more time to plan for the summer projects once the students arrived here in June for the summer. Like I said, we couldn't do it without our mentors. And if you've ever been a mentor or had a mentor, you know the impact that can have on either you or someone. And so we've really, really tried to focus and beef up that component of the program so that they play a critical role in the success of the students in their summer experience, and that it also helps them build some leadership skills as well. Another new component, and this came per the request of the 2017 class, they wanted to know more about KUB once they got here. A lot of times when they get here, they're placed in a department, and they may not necessarily have the opportunity to engage or interact with our leadership within the organization. And so last year, we held a manager's roundtable. And so as you can see here, we kind of did it a round robin format where the students had the opportunity to sit down with several different managers for so many minutes. And I wouldn't call it an interview process, but somewhat like an interview process. They had the chance to ask the managers what they do, and so the managers got to talk about what they do on a day-to-day basis and how our departments work together. But, and then they also got to hear about the students' summer experience and what they were doing, and kind of connect the dots so the students could see how we all work together. And so this was something that the managers, after they participated in this part of the program, we got a lot of positive feedback, and they were like, hey, we want to do it again. So we're going to do it again next week. And so it was beneficial for not only just our managers, but it was beneficial for our students because it gave them some exposure to the leadership within our organization as well. We really have worked hard to try to increase our outreach efforts. And some of the ways that we have done that, because we get them as juniors, is oftentimes we lose that contact once they graduate from high school and go off to college. And so we have developed a social media platform to try to stay connected with them. We have a Teamwork Facebook alumni page. And so we've been able to utilize our social media platforms and Instagram to try to stay connected with the students. Last year, we held our first annual Teamwork Alumni Reception, where we invited former Teamwork participants to come back. And it was a way for our HR department to kind of stand up before them and talk about employment opportunities. It was also a way for us to try to capture some information so that we could stay connected and we could do some proactive recruiting on our end as well. And so that is going well. Another thing that we have been doing is working with HR to develop a tracking system where we can track our top performers in the program. We've got that documentation, and that way we can use it as a recruiting tool for the students to kind of come back, and we can reach out to them and encourage them to come back and work with us when they're home for summer breaks and the winter breaks as well. One of the challenges of the program is having that contact information, and so we have been working with Project Grad, who has an active tracking mechanism to track Austin East High School students who have participated in the Project Grad program after high school. And so they have agreed to work with us to help us in gathering that information, and we're going to partner with them on a couple of events that they do as well to help build and continue strengthening our pipeline and resources of engagement with these students. In closing, I just would like to say that I think the core of this program has stayed the same. It is aging well. It's hard to believe we have just finished our 23rd year of the program, which makes me feel a little anxious. But I think with some of the new elements that we're adding to the program, I think this year was one of our strongest years ever, and I think it's evident from the class participation. I remember when our team went in and we were trying to recruit, we came back and we had almost 40 students that had applied for the program, and we were like, oh my God, what are we going to do with all these students now that we've been actively trying to engage them and reach out. But I think from the pool and from the reputation of the program, we've got a good group of kids working here with us this summer, and I'm happy that they're here. And I just want to recognize a few folks before I proceed, and I would like to recognize Trina Gallman, who is the program administrator of this program. I could not do this without her. She runs a tight ship with the kids and keep them going where they're supposed to go. So I just want to thank you for what you do. And then I also would like to recognize some of the representatives of the class of 2018 and their mentors. I'm going to ask you to stand and introduce yourselves and what department you work in.
Hi, my name is Jameer Lawrence. I'm in underground construction.
I'm Chuck Drag, and I'm Jameer's mentor.
Hi, my name is Trinity Mattress. I'm in Human Resources.
Hi, my name is Emily Smith, and I'm in Human Resources. I'm Trinity's mentor.
My name is Justin King, and I'm also in Human Resources.
My name is Chris Stevenson. I'm in Water Systems Engineering, and for the second half of my summer, I will be switching to Electric System Engineering.
I'm Blake Brown. I'm Chris's mentor. I'm in Water Systems Engineering.
Before I take my seat, I just want to share a quick video with you. We showed this video at the teamwork reception a couple weeks ago, but I thought it would be good for you to hear from some of our former students in their own words about their experience with the program.
I'm Jeremiah Bishop. Currently work KUB procurement office.
My name is Stephanie Cole. I was in the teamwork program in the spring of 2017.
My name is Al Grimes. I'm a lineman apprentice, and I went to this program in the year 2000.
My name is Makita Clark, and I work in the Human Resources Department as an analyst. I was a part of the first teamwork class in 1995.
The KUB teamwork kind of led the way for me. I was a KUB team worker in 1998, graduated high school in 1999. I went through the program and all the classes, and it was very influential in where I am today. Just learning communication skills, how to professionally dress, how to correctly prepare a resume was very, very, very important to my KUB career, as well as getting me ready for college.
Is the most important thing that I've learned through the teamwork program was just the hard work that goes into creating a program like this. There are people who take time out of their days to spend with teenagers who don't really know what they're doing. And you don't really think about that until you're in such a small group like the teamwork program.
I can still remember when I first told my granddad that I had been selected to participate in the program. He was so proud and so excited, and it just meant so much to me because he worked at KUB, and he's not easily impressed, so that moment there was just
One very important thing for me going to the teamwork program that I didn't realize at the time was actually the interview process. That is so pivotal to getting a job, where everything they teach you from presentation to how you carry yourself, to how you speak, to how you walk in. The minute you walk in, you're being interviewed, and how you're perceived the whole entire time. So for me, that was very beneficial because I had never been through anything quite like that.
I've met a lot of people that going through the teamwork program, I could notice a change in them while they were taking the class. I could tell it was making a change because they had to take something seriously else they weren't going to get this job.
The program is very beneficial because you have experts or people who are subject matter experts in the field here at KUB, and they're able to pass on the knowledge that they have to the students. So it's important to pay attention in the classes, to take and absorb everything that they're given to you, because you will be able to use those skills in the future.
So for me, and getting into this program, to be quite frank, I was raised and born and spent most of my time in East Knoxville, and when I actually got a job at KUB, it was it was more diverse than I was accustomed to. I had never been outside of my culture, so to speak. I played sports, and I traveled around and did things like that, but to work with people who are just raised differently than you and brought up in a whole different background than you. You got people who live on farms and things of that nature. And at that time, the only time I asked them for was on a field trip, to be kind of direct. So when I got to KUB, it was extremely diverse, extremely different, and that piece is very pivotal to rounding you as an individual for where you go later in life. I like to say teamwork kind of started the path for me. Being a junior at Austin East High School, I've always been around my own people, around my own friends, my own community. So that program kind of opened my eyes to a bigger world outside of Austin East, as well as the bigger world outside of Knoxville even, learning the utility business. If I could give you any advice, I would tell you to take in this opportunity. Be very present with what you're learning. Don't just kind of go into it nonchalantly, because this is a very big opportunity that you have in front of you right now. And to take everything in you can. It can be a lot, but I guarantee you it will be beneficial to where you're headed in the future.
I was in the program 23 years ago, and I am so proud and excited that KUB is still committed to participating in the communities that we serve.
And that wraps up my presentation. Do you all have any questions?
Leslie, how many employees do we have now that are graduates of the program?
We have 10. We've kind of stayed stable with that number. So we do have 10 in various different departments here at KUB.
So as far as, you said that you had 40 students that were interested, were all 40 students able to attend?
Well, we lost probably about 8 right out of the gate when we started the classroom sessions in January, and that was not by our fault or anything we were doing. They were offering some ACT prep classes that conflicted in the same time, and so the students had, unfortunately, had to make a choice, and they were prepping for those ACT courses. And so we naturally lose some kind of throughout the process, and so having the 23 to finish was a bigger number, because our typical numbers are around 15, 16 students, so we had to plan for more, even with what we landed on.
And as part of the recruitment, do you use this video? Or
We literally pulled this video together right before the reception. It was the brainchild of Jay and Trina, who work in my department. So we're going to use it as a recruiting tool. But we wanted to have something fresh to show at the reception. So we did show it at the teamwork reception, but we will be using it.
That was great. And even having the students that have just participated get up and speak.
Yes.
With your newfound skills of
Thank you. Thank you.
Leslie, I really appreciate you and your team with your just dedication to this program. And the students, be sure to take it back to the folks that are in your program. I know I talked to you all the night that we had the teamwork reception, but this is a great opportunity. And, you know, at this stage in your life, you're sponges, and you need to soak up everything that you can, because this is going to be an experience that you're going to remember the rest of your life. And you mentors, thank you for your devotion to this program, because you may not think you're making an impact, and years later these students are going to look back and realize, hey, that may have really changed my life. So everybody that participates, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the rest of the summer because you've got a lot to learn. And for the rest of the commissioners, there's a program at the end of this that is a great, great program to go to, because these students are going to get up and talk about their summer and actually put together a presentation. And it's a really, really great thing to see, because even you students are going to surprise yourselves because of where you started and where you end up at the end of the summer. So congratulations, have fun, and please emphasize to the other students and mentors how much we on the board appreciate you all.
Thank you. I want to add my thanks to Leslie, Trina, and frankly, everybody in this room here and the people you don't see. This is just one example of KUB's culture. We're doing this because it supports our community and it supports these students, and everybody is engaged in it. Everybody's very supportive of it. So without that management support, leadership support, we wouldn't be able to deliver on it. So I thank all of you all. They do this out of their budgets and in addition to everything else they do. So they do an absolutely terrific job. And like you, I remember when it started 23 years ago. So it puts gray hair and age on all of us. Moving to another topic, as you know, KUB's received a lot of awards over time, and particularly in the last few years, for quality in our water and wastewater operations. We couldn't do that without the support of our lab. We have a state certified lab, which is a little bit unusual, and we're fortunate to have a manager of regulatory compliance, Debbie Ailey, who runs that lab. I want her to tell you about that lab, and I want you to take as much pride in that as you do in the teamwork program, because we couldn't do what we do here at KUB every single day without the support of the lab and Debbie's staff.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Commissioners, many of you all have visited the lab, and you know what an important role it plays in ensuring the quality of our drinking water with its testing capabilities. All of the monitoring and testing that we do of our customers' water is summarized every year in our water quality report. And the 2017 report was just released in April. And it continues to show our community that our water system not only meets, but also exceeds all of those standards for safe water, federal and state standards. Our regulators are actually often very complimentary of the fact that KUB chooses to do more monitoring than is required for a utility our size. And we actually can do that because we have our own in-house certified lab. In addition to the focus of the laboratory on drinking water, it plays a key role in helping us maintain compliance with regulations, both water and wastewater. And a large part of that effort is not just the reporting that we do to our regulatory authorities, but the reporting that we do to our operations personnel, so that they know that their processes and their systems are working properly to meet all of those requirements. And then if something abnormal occurs, we have actually the laboratory to help us investigate those concerns. And then the lab plays a key role in serving our customers, both indirectly and directly. Anything from testing a customer's tap water if they have some sort of concern, let's say like lead because they live in an older home, have older plumbing fixtures, or maybe the additional monitoring that we do alongside our industries so that they understand their wastewater better and they can meet the requirements to discharge it to us for treatment. Because of the work that we do and its regulatory basis, and it is so important to public health and safety, we maintain a certification with the state of Tennessee. In fact, all labs across the nation that report drinking water data for compliance purposes have to be certified in their state and follow the requirements that EPA has laid out in their lab certification manual. That document really focuses on basically 6 areas. Quality assurance. Every lab has to have a written quality assurance plan that describes the practices that ensure the accuracy of the numbers that you generate. You have to have that reviewed by the state, and you certainly have to show that you're following it. You have to demonstrate that you adhere to those EPA procedures that are particular to the type of compliance work that you're doing, and certainly your staff has to have the training and the experience to perform them properly. The ultimate proof of that comes every year in the performance assessments that we do, where we receive blind samples from a third party, and we have to test those and submit correct results in order to retain our certification from year to year. And every lab really should have excellent documentation records management practices. EPA places a lot of emphasis on that because if you had a result that was ever in question, you'd have to produce information for either traceability or defensibility reasons, so that's very important. And then once every 3 years, the state auditor comes on site. He spends 2 to 3 days with us watching the analysts perform tests, asking them lots of questions, and reviewing our records to make sure that we're following the requirements that EPA's laid out. There are definite benefits to having an in-house lab. Most of the testing that we do, we provide the results back either the same day or the following day that the samples are collected. And that allows us to do a quick compliance assessment. If we see a number that gives us some concern, our lab's available to do additional testing. And that helps us to know whether things have returned to normal or there's some sort of a concern there, a trend there that needs to be addressed. I mentioned our support for operations on a daily basis. We also help them with special projects or improvements that are going on. I'll mention a few of those in a minute. Our lab analysts are actually a great technical resource to the organization. We expect them to be more than just lab technicians. They know the regulations, they know our permits, and they have excellent backgrounds to provide some expertise across the organization, and they do help out there. Probably the most important benefit from my perspective is the quality of the work that we do. Commercial labs that receive a lot of samples from across the state, the nation even, depending on what they're certified for. And they do focus on quality. There are great commercial labs out there, but they also focus on throughput and deadlines. In our laboratory, our analysts know the importance of the numbers that they're generating and why we're generating them. And they do take a lot of pride in that because they know it's important, not just to KUB, but our community and our environment. Additionally, if we do have a non-compliance concern, we have all the supporting information available to us. You'll pay more for that from a commercial lab. And we use that data whenever we have any kind of a non-conformance to help us investigate what went on. It can also help us control our costs. The testing that we do will cost 2 to 3 times more in a commercial laboratory, and that's simply because they have to have additional personnel and equipment to meet a variety of needs from their customers and deadlines too. They literally can't afford for someone to bring in samples on a given day and not have extra instrumentation if something is down or extra personnel in order to meet a quick deadline. And I shared with you that we turn our results around pretty quickly. We have to for our operations. A commercial laboratory will charge you 5 to 10 times more if you want your numbers overnight or less than a week. And that's just to give you top priority and to cover courier services or overnight shipping. And certainly there are risks associated with shipping samples to another site. They can be lost, compromised, broken, and that can end up in a non-conformance for a utility. And then most commercial labs are not available on Saturday or Sunday or 10 o'clock at night when you have a utility concern. unless you're willing to pay for prior arrangements to have those special services. And there is somebody at our lab every day of the year, including holidays, because of the utility work that we support. And our staff understands. They can be called after hours to help out with testing needs. We've actually been certified for up to 20 years now. There are 6 utility laboratories across the state that have capabilities and certifications beyond just bacteriological testing, and that includes us. The state certification officer informed me this year we actually are certified for more procedures and have more capability than anyone right now in terms of the utilities in the state of Tennessee. We can do up to 45 procedures that are approved for the compliance work that we do and look for over 150 substances routinely in our drinking water with those particular procedures. We don't have a lot of redundant equipment, but we certainly have some very state-of-the-art equipment, and that allows us to look down parts per billion levels or lower to meet those detection limits that are necessary for the compliance work that we do. And we have some additional equipment that helps us look beyond those 150 substances and sometimes for unknowns, which is very beneficial if we're investigating some sort of a concern. Really, probably the greatest resource we have, though, are the 8 analysts that we have on staff right now. They all have science degrees and backgrounds in science, and half of them came to us from a commercial laboratory. So we have some excellent experience in the laboratory right now, and they work very hard. The lab last year, is a fairly typical year, received almost 18,000 samples into their system. It came through the doors to us. And they are a critical part of those 100,000 analyses that we do every year in support of water quality. As you know, KUB continues to really make improvements to the water and wastewater system, and the labs also supported those efforts when needed. They've provided testing results both early on in the evaluation and all through into the implementation of some new systems and some new technologies at our water and wastewater plants that you all have heard about. They also support the construction of our new water mains and main repairs with the bacteriological testing that they do, so that we know that the water that flows through that new pipe is safe for our customers to drink when it gets there. And as I mentioned, we're called to support at times abnormal or unusual situations. A great example of that is when a leak is reported. We can do some very quick tests that will help us try to determine whether that's more a pipe in our distribution system that can be leaking, or more related maybe a stormwater or drainage problem on property. And then it's really important for our laboratory to be looking at emerging concerns. KUB has participated every 5 years since the early 2000s in EPA's unregulated contaminant monitoring requirements. Those requirements we actually rely on an outside commercial lab for because they're very specialized. And you have to have some additional certifications in order to do that testing. The monitoring itself requires utilities every 5 years to look for up to 30 new substances that are unregulated and report that occurrence data into a database. That occurrence data from our system, along with utilities all across the state, is paired up with public health research and information. And then EPA looks at that and tries to make a determination about whether some additional contaminant needs to be regulated in the future. Participation in that monitoring really gives us an opportunity to stay prepared for new regulations in the future, which often take a while to work through the system, but it helps us to think about the research and the pilot testing, even the monitoring that we need to be doing to be prepared for treatment changes that may be necessary if we have a new regulated contaminant in the future. And we encourage our customers to call us and talk to us if they have questions or concerns. Really, really important for utilities to stay aware of the concerns that their customers have. And our laboratory actually manages those calls when they come into us and uses our testing to help resolve concerns or answer questions or make people feel more at ease at times when they hear things in the news about various contaminants. Ultimately, we really want to be sure that everybody in our community feels confident and secure about their drinking water, and really our lab is just one more way that we can help make sure we build that confidence with our customers. And I'll be glad to take any questions you might have.
Quick question, Debbie. So how much leeway or empowerment does the lab have when you find a non-compliance issue, a non-conformity issue, to raise that up the chain so that it gets addressed pretty quickly?
Oh, we have communication constantly with operations. I think that that's one of the strengths that we have at the laboratory. The laboratory calls the operations staff, talks with them, even if it's not a violation or a non-conformance, as they see things on a day-to-day basis. It's so important that they can do a quick compliance assessment on things. Yes.
Just a comment, not a question, but in your list of benefits, you did not list the impact you have on economic development. And that's a big one. We create jobs in part because your lab's able to prove that our water is clean, and that brings companies and jobs. So thank you for that.
When you say you have a state-of-the-art lab, I guess, compared to all the labs in Tennessee, do you know how we compare nationally? And then I guess the second question is, as far as upgrades to your testing equipment, is that something where, I mean, maybe this varies, but where you have a piece of equipment that just can't be upgraded and you have to buy a new one, or are there upgrades available, or are there testing styles? Is that something that you can give a quick or a brief overview on easily?
Yeah, we have to make sure we maintain equipment that's necessary for the compliance work that we do. We have a budget for replacement of equipment. We're very fortunate in that regard. Instrumentation can vary across laboratories, and I think certainly the instrumentation that we have at ours is comparable with other laboratories that do compliance work. We may not have as many of a given type of instrument. When you start comparing yourself to a research laboratory where they're doing things and they're doing investigations, possibly litigation, there are very different types of equipment which we would not have in our laboratory. But as far as the compliance work that we do, we are comparable to not only other labs in the state of Tennessee, but labs across the nation. There are about 5 labs in the state of Tennessee that have instrumentation probably comparable to ours that do this type of work, and others that go beyond that if they have other types of customer needs. And across the nation, the same thing. It just really depends on the type of work that you're doing. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite tours was the visit to your, part of the tour, my visit to your lab. It was fascinating.
We love what we do.
Yeah, you can tell.
Thanks for telling us about the lab, and I think we take for granted our great drinking water, and we know that you and your staff play an important part in us being able to enjoy that with no cares or worries.
We've got one more quick presentation, Gabe, if you will. This is very timely and very important for you here because it's a very good news story to end the day on. So.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. I'll be the closer today. So I want to give you a brief update on a critical project we're doing with one of our biggest customers, UT Medical Center. As typical with any hospital, their reliability is super important to us, and we've been working with them for years on improving and replacing equipment in that area. It began really about 4 years ago when we installed this picture here at the Cherokee Trail substation. Now, its primary focus was the Cherokee farm across the highway, but it also built enough capacity for us to serve the hospital as we upgraded existing equipment. And so with that completion, it really allowed us to do work at University Hospital substation. That's a substation that's been serving that hospital for over 30 years and was needed a replacement of equipment. And so those next 4 bullets really describe the things we've done. Replaced the transformer, we've upgraded the wires and poles around that substation. We've installed fiber communications, which then in turn allows us to put automation into that substation. So all that's culminated into a multi-year project to really improve an existing substation. And what we're at today is now what's left is the big piece of the pie is replacing the underground cables. These are the cables that go from the substation to the actual UT equipment. And we committed this thing early on that we would do this, once we started, we would do it nonstop, 24/7. Okay, we commit to the work, get it done, and get out of there to minimize any risk to our customer. We're replacing about 3 miles of cable. Now the distance between the substation and the hospital is very short. It's a lot of runs of cable, a lot of ductwork there to feed that larger load that customer needs to support that hospital. So we began about a year ago talking internally with our key departments, but also with our customer that we've built a great relationship with. We've been working with them for quite a while, saying, okay, how do we want to do this? What's the best time? What's the focus on this project? And now we're at that point at the project to do that. As I mentioned in the previous slide, because of all that work we've done before, no outages are required. We were able to serve them from that new Cherokee Trail substation, thus de-energizing the existing station and allowing us to pull this new cable through the system. And the picture to the right is actually our crews pulling this cable. That's Tracy Williams in the front and Robert Forbes in the back. They're actually pulling the cable into the ductwork through the station into the UT Medical Center electric equipment. And they've been working on that project already. The reason for the timely update, as Ms. Roach mentioned, we started this work on Monday morning at 6 a.m. And we've worked 24/7 since then. We have had 3 crews work a day shift and 3 crews work a night shift to get this work completed. The good news is, as of this morning, all the cable has been replaced. It is brand new cable. We're spending the rest of today and tomorrow making up the ends of those cables and connecting it to the equipment that they're to be attached to. And then we'll turn it over to our operations folks, who will then begin testing the cable, making sure everything was put in correctly. We'll do a thermography. We'll energize the cables and just make sure everything's perfect. We'll do that for about 2 weeks given the holiday, and at that point then actually put the UT hospital back on that existing substation that's been there serving them for many decades. It's been a very, very planned and organized project. I can't speak out enough to the guys, the folks in engineering, system operations, construction, obviously, our folks in the key accounts department who have built this relationship with our customer, but also our customer at UT Medical Center. They have been just great to work with. This is a big deal to them, but as everybody knows, it's important to replace this equipment and materials before it fails. And throughout this 4-year endeavor, if you want to call it that, we have had no outages, no issues, no problems with this customer. And once we get past this final part of the project in July, we'll have completely replaced everything in that area for that customer to serve for the next 40 to 50 years. And so I want to give you that update because our crews are working through this heat this last week. That's the only thing we didn't know was going to happen. But we're making sure they're well hydrated and rested, and we'll get this work done by tomorrow with the goal of getting it back in service by mid-July. So I want to give you a brief update on that and be glad to answer any questions about the project. This picture actually was taken at night, just to let you know. This is a nighttime shot in one of the manholes in the parking lot. So that's just even.
Did they experience any outages when that huge sinkhole over there adjacent to their property?
It did not. Actually, okay. Fortunately, it was not near our electrical equipment. It was close to our water line, but even then, that didn't impact them directly. So that none of the sinkholes that have occurred near them has affected their electric and water reliability whatsoever. Yeah.
So, okay, when you switch over on the night, you say you'll switch over on the night to the new source, or will you run them concurrently to make sure that there are no glitches?
The way it works, yeah, exactly. You actually put the new wire, the new cable in service with the old cable working, and then you just basically disconnect the old cables. They never see a blink or a hiccup whatsoever throughout the whole process. We call it. Yeah, I jinxed it, I'm sorry. That's part of that whole 2-week process to get that ready.
Commissioners, we talk a lot about Century 2 from the numbers. That's Century 2. That's investing money in our systems to help our community and help our customers. So we thank you for your support of Century 2 every year when we come to you with our budgets. So thank you, and thank you, Gabe, and everybody who's worked on this project. That's all we have.
All right, any other business or comments from commissioners? I know we have a visitor. Would you like to address us today? Okay, all right, just checking. There will be a board meeting at 8:30 a.m. on August the 13th. You can refer to the website for updated meeting information. Following the adjournment of this meeting, the board and staff will have a lunch session across the hall that's open to the public. And with no further business, this meeting is adjourned.